Hey guys, this is Gabe Dimmick from the Baseball Rebellion, and today we're going to break down Austin Beck. He is a high school draft prospect who, in the last mock draft that I looked at, he was projected to go 8th to the Philadelphia Phillies. He's actually from North Carolina, and he goes to a school, North Davidson, that has been known to be good for a long time, and they have a tradition of putting out pretty talented players, and so that's how I first heard about Austin Beck, and then I believe he's coming back from an injury, an ACL tear, and so because of that injury, he was maybe lower on the boards than we might have thought, but now he's really started to rise. He's had a great senior year. I think he's hit 12 home runs and hit right around 500 in a pretty competitive conference. So I wanted to look at his swing and see what I saw. I like a lot of what he does. One of the big things I noticed is that he actually does better on high pitches than low pitches, and so he swings a little bit differently to those. So what I want to see here, or what I want to show you here, is this first one. This is a BP swing, and this is a higher pitch. So what you're going to see, the load is really good on all pitches. So he loads basically by turning this back pocket toward the pitcher and this back knee rotating. It doesn't get outside his ankle, but it rotates back to face more toward the catcher. So he's really setting up his stride really well there. And then you're going to see this arrow that I put right next to his back hip. He's going to move forward from his back hip, so he's going to move away from this dot and from this arrow with his hip, but by the time he lands, let's see where his head is, and we can tell just basically, we don't see his foot in the ground, but we can tell where he's landing just based on where he is in his turn. So you can see his hip has really moved away, his head has moved some, but his head is relatively back in his body, right over just behind his belly button. So that's going to help him create a nice upswing. His back knee starting to turn in. I think he could get a little bit more of a separation by really pulling that back heel off the ground a little bit more at that landing position. But overall, he does a pretty good job. He rows back, he loads back with his back shoulder, back elbow. At this point in his landing, I think he, in my opinion, gets a little bit too high with his hands. So you're going to see that the center of his hands are up by his ear. And so while you can still turn really well out of that, he does actually on this swing, as I'll show in just a second. I think because of that high hand position, he's going to feel more powerful actually down to the ball at times. And so if his swing path starts to get off, it may have something to do with his hands being too high at that landing point. If you think about chopping a piece of wood on the ground, well, where are you going to go first? You're going to go up with your hands and your upper body so that you feel more powerful down. So what I see with the best players is normally their hands are a little lower at their landing position, right around their bicep or their back elbow, but lower, and so that's going to help them feel more like an uppercut punch, like a boxer. So they're going to feel more powerful up. Now, Bryce Harper's a guy who tends to land with his hands pretty high, and he still gets the bat around and is obviously a superstar. So not to say that you can't hit like this in this position, but there are just certain things I would look out for as he gets older and gets into hitting more with a wood bat and pro ball, things like that. Where he won't get away with certain mistakes. He'll have to hit balls really clean, which will require a really good upper body turn. So here he recovers out of it really nicely. So you're going to see his elbows really work apart. So what I mean by that is, we're going to draw kind of an angle here between his elbows, and you're just going to see that distance turn. So the front arm goes up, the back arm goes down, but you're going to see that distance remain about the same all the way through. So I'm drawing this angle a bunch of times, and you're going to see the elbows are still apart, all the way to contact. So all you see here, though, is that those angles have just turned up, right? But the distance is still there, and he didn't collapse his elbows or extend out too soon. So he really turned with his body, keeps his hands by his back shoulder. And on this particular swing, again, this is a higher pitch. He does a really nice job of keeping his hands high, so his knob stays right at chest height all the way through to contact. You're going to see his back leg and his back hip really clear through. So I think this is what he does exceptionally well on high pitches, but doesn't do as well on low pitches. So really watch. You can see that at the bottom of the screen, you can see his back heel actually start to come into the screen, and that's because, again, this back hip and back leg are pulling up and forward, and they really clear. So from his back knee up through his spine is a really nice lean back. And so it's not a very shoulder dominant swing. His shoulders stay behind his hips and his legs for a really long time, and then they finally go at the last second, which I think is a more ideal way to swing, and we want to try to promote that even on low pitches. So let's go to his game swing now. And this video is kind of playing in slow motion, but yeah, there we go. So here's his game swing, and again, same load we just saw in his BP swing. Very, very nice. You're going to see him pulling back. Everything's really good. To here, he's landing really well. He sets up his turn. Again, you see the hands a little bit higher than we might like. And this pitch is going to be really low. You can see the catcher's mitt, how low it is. And what you're going to see here is, as he really starts to go even a couple frames further, he's in okay shape. But now what you're going to see is his back leg doesn't clear through nearly as well as it did on the BP swing. So how does he get the ball or the bat down to the ball? Well, he really drops his arms down, and he really takes his back shoulder more diagonal and forward, so down and forward diagonally instead of just tilting back. Because in order to just tilt back like that, this back hip and this back knee would have to really keep going ahead of him. But because he doesn't really maybe understand exactly how to get to that low pitch, he doesn't side bend here with his back oblique. What he does is he really drops his arms down. You can see that front arm getting really straight. His knob drops and hands drop way down by his hip, and then he comes up through it. Now, he's a talented, athletic guy who's probably pretty coordinated, and so he barrels this ball up and looks like he hits it for a double or extra base hit. But again, is this the optimal way to hit this pitch? I don't think so. I think it's going to be harder against better pitchers, and I think it's going to be harder when he doesn't have a metal bat in his hands. But again, when you are coordinated and talented and you find the barrel, you're going to get away with stuff. And again, he has a good foundation. He sets up his turn very, very well. You can see the front foot being landing in facing fair territory, the front side being open. He's setting himself up. His back knee is starting to turn in. I think he could get even a little bit more there, a little bit more separation. But again, I think the biggest thing is on these low pitches, can he learn how to keep his hands high? Can he learn how to side bend behind his hip and behind his back leg so that even more of his force and even more of his body is supporting the barrel at contact on these low balls? And I think if he can do that, then the sky's the limit for this guy. So I think that's the biggest flaw that I see in his swing. But again, he does a ton right. Got one more game swing loaded up here to take a look at. So a little bit of a different view. And again, this one is a lower pitch. And, you can see that back shoulder again just kind of going diagonally down and forward instead of tilting more up and down. So we want to tilt into the turn where he tries to almost tilt and turn together. Really drops his hands down. Again, he catches the barrel here and hits this ball well. And he has a high level of aggression. I watched some full rounds of him even in a cage where a lot of guys don't really go for it or don't understand how to go 100%. And he had that in him. He had that intent to crush the ball, which goes a long way through high school. But again, this guy, if he's getting drafted in the first round, he's expected to be one of the top players in their organization. And so he's got the tools, he's got the talent to do it, and for the most part he has the swing to do it. He's just got to make sure that he's practicing smart, and he's really learning how to use especially his back oblique turning behind the back hip and the back leg so that his body works in proper sequence all the time instead of just on high pitches. So I know sometimes you guys who are watching like to see these swings fluidly all the way through, so I'm just going to let these videos play really quick. So this one's in slow-mo. That's the high pitch. Now we've got his first game swing. This is a low pitch. You can see it all the way through. And then here is his second game swing all the way through. Cool. So hope you guys enjoyed this week's breakdown of high school prospect Austin Beck, and I'll be interested to see where he goes in the draft. Thanks for watching.